Have you ever felt like you're surrounded by so many things, yet still missing something truly precious? I've met many Buddhists in their 50-second, 60-second, even 70-second, who sat down beside me with a long, quiet sigh. They had houses, retirement accounts, children and grandchildren, all doing well. But still, they felt empty. And when I gently asked, "So what brings you true happiness?" there was silence. Because amidst everything they had, the most important thing had been forgotten: simplicity. I've lived in monasteries across many parts of the United States, some in busy cities, some in peaceful countryside. And one thing I've noticed is this: the simpler people live, the more they smile. An older woman in California once shared this with me. "Venerable, when I was young, I thought I had to have it all to feel secure. But the more I had, the more anxious I became. It wasn't until I got sick and started losing everything that I was left with just a little garden, a cup of tea in the morning, and my breath. And that's when I realized that's all I ever needed." I nodded. Because the Buddha once taught, contentment is true wealth. Knowing when to stop is peace. Simplicity doesn't mean lacking. It means letting go of what no longer serves us, so we can see what's truly valuable, still right here. I want you to imagine this. It's early morning. You wake up not because of an alarm, not to check your phone, but to the sound of birds outside your window, gentle light filtering through the curtain, and your breath, just your breath. No buzzing notifications, no appointments, no shopping list. Just you, fully present. That's the kind of simplicity most people spend a lifetime chasing, when really, it's always been waiting for us to come home. At the monastery, I make tea every morning, not because it's fancy or part of a ritual, but because each cup of tea holds a quiet lesson in mindfulness. If you can pour tea without planning what to do next, without worrying who's going to call today, or scolding yourself for what you haven't done yet, then even just hot water and dried leaves can bring you deep peace. Simplicity is like that. No fuss, no pretending, no pressure to become anything. In the Satipatthana Sutta, the Buddha teaches, when walking, know that you are walking. When breathing, know that you are breathing. That's it. Simple, but it's the root of true mindfulness. When we're young, we chase so many things. But at some point when our health shifts, when the mind slows down, we realize that the quality of life isn't in how much we experience, but in how deeply we experience each moment. An elderly friend once told me, "I used to travel to 10 countries a year. Now all I need is sunlight through the window, some meditation music, and a simple vegetarian meal, and I feel there's nothing more to wish for." That friend used to live a very complicated life. Now she lives simply, and she's far, far happier. So let me ask you this. Are there things in your home you're holding on to just because you feel guilty letting go? Are there relationships you keep entertaining though they leave you drained, not nourished? Are there habits, worries, thoughts don't serve you, but they keep looping over and over? If so, maybe it's time to gently tell yourself, I deserve a simpler life. People don't suffer because they lack. They suffer because they carry too much. Living simply is knowing what you truly need and releasing the rest. It's not escaping. It's a conscious, awakened choice to walk lighter on the path back to yourself. As one Zen master said, the less you carry, the closer you are to truth. And I believe that deeply. If your life feels chaotic right now, if it all feels like just too much, try this. One day with fewer words, one space more uncluttered. one mind, less judgmental. And suddenly, you'll start to see more clearly real love, real life, and the real you whole and enough. Let simplicity be the way you return to what's most precious, yourself. There's a kind of exhaustion that doesn't come from work, doesn't come from the people around us. It comes from deep within, from the things we haven't yet forgiven. And I'm not talking about forgiving others. I'm talking about forgiving ourselves. Have you ever felt that before? Even though the years have passed, even when everyone around you says, it's in the past, yet whenever you close your eyes, your heart still aches for something you did or something you didn't do. There are old whispers that return, quietly but painfully. I should have handled it differently. If only I had been stronger. It's my fault things turned out that way. I remember one evening after chanting, a woman in her 62nd sat beside me, tears in her eyes. She said, "Venerable, it's been 30 years, and I still can't forgive myself. When I was younger, under so much pressure, I let go of a man who truly loved me. He left, and later, I realized I had lost the most precious thing. Now I have a family, children, a stable life. But when I sit alone, I still feel guilty." I gently held her hand and said, "You don't need to spend the next 30 years punishing yourself, because the one you left behind is also you waiting to be forgiven." Many people think forgiveness is something we give to others. But in truth, especially when it comes to ourselves, forgiveness is a gift we give to our own heart. Not because we weren't wrong, not because we forget, but because we've learned what we needed to learn. And now, it's time to move forward. In the Dhammapada, the Buddha teaches, though one may fall 100 times, if they rise again, they are victorious. He didn't say the strong are those who never make mistakes. He said, the strong are those who dare to stand back up. That's the path of awakening. In my years of guiding people, I've met many who've made painful choices. Some betrayed loved ones. Some abandoned their families. Some broke trust with themselves. They came to the temple because they couldn't bear the voice in their heart anymore. But here's what I witnessed when they bowed in repentance. When they forgave themselves with sincerity, something shifted. Their faces softened. Their eyes cleared. And they became some of the most compassionate souls I've ever met. Forgiveness isn't pretending it never happened. It's not lying to ourselves, saying, I did nothing wrong. It's looking at the truth with kindness. You might say to yourself, I didn't know better at the time. I was acting out of fear. I never meant to hurt anyone, I just didn't know how to do better. Then place your hand over your heart, close your eyes, and take a deep, slow breath. Hold yourself the way a loving mother would hold a child who's lost their way. Now, imagine walking through a forest path. On your back is a heavy bag filled with all the things you haven't forgiven, a mistake, a hurtful word, a missed opportunity, a wrong turn. How many years have you carried that bag? Has it taken you further in life? Or has it made you walk slower, bow your head, and struggle to breathe? Now imagine this. You stop. You open the bag. You look at each item and nod in acceptance. Then you place them down, one by one. And when the bag is finally empty, your shoulders feel lighter. Your steps are freer. Even the sunlight feels clearer through the leaves. Forgiving yourself isn't weakness. It's the strength of someone who has outgrown the need to carry old wounds just to prove something. Maturity isn't about being perfect. It's about learning from imperfection, loving the cracks in your heart, and continuing on with more openness than before. I don't know what you're carrying right now. I don't know how long you've been blaming yourself. But if you're listening to these words today, maybe it's time to exhale. Maybe it's time to let go. Maybe it's time to hold yourself and gently whisper, I forgive myself, and I am growing from the very place I once fell. Give yourself a new beginning. You don't need to wait for anyone else to accept you first. Because you have always been worthy of healing. Have you ever looked into the mirror and seen not just your face, but every regret, every mistake you wish you could erase staring right back at you? I've heard many people say to me, Venerable, I just can't forgive myself for what I've done. Or, I don't think I can change. I've been this way for too long. If you've ever felt like that, I want you to pause for a moment and hear this. You are not your past. You are the possibility waiting to be awakened. Every one of us carries a past. Some of it beautiful, some of it painful, wise choices, and ones we'd rather not remember. But if you believe your past defines you forever, then you're living like someone already sentenced, when in truth, you are still free. I once met a man in his 52nd. He had battled alcoholism for nearly 15 years. He came to the temple with hesitation and said, Venerable, I don't think I deserve to practice. I'm not worthy. I smiled gently and asked, Then who is? If not the ones who've known suffering and now want to change. The Buddha didn't teach only the wise. He embraced the broken, the thieves, the lost, the forgotten, because beyond the mistakes, he saw a human being capable of awakening. Imagine your heart as a piece of land. Maybe in the past, others threw trash on it. Maybe you yourself planted some thorny seeds. But today, you can dig it up, clean it out, and plant something new. No land is forever barren. Sometimes, it just needs someone to believe it can bloom again. People often say, I'm too old to start over. But my friend, the lotus doesn't bloom according to the age of the one who watches it. It blooms when there is light, water, and the courage to let go. I've witnessed people in their retirement years learning meditation for the first time, studying the Dharma, learning to say, I'm sorry, and even learning to love themselves gently, patiently. They didn't start early, but they started at the right time, the moment they were finally ready to open their hearts. A 72-year-old man once told me after a 3-day retreat, Venerable, I've lived for 7 decades, but today is the first time I've truly felt what it means to be awake. I replied, that means today is the day you truly began to live. Modern neuroscience tells us we can rewire our minds, how we think, how we react, how we feel at any age. This is called neuroplasticity. The Buddha taught something similar centuries ago. The mind is the root of all things. If the mind is pure, life becomes pure. So no, your past is not your identity. It's a collection of experiences. And experience can always be transformed into wisdom. Here's something I want you to remember. You are not obligated to live like the old version of you. No one has the right to keep you in the story of who you used to be. You have the power to walk away from the person who once failed and walk toward the person you are becoming. That's not being fake. That's being brave. That's being true. When the monk Angulimala, a man who once took nearly 1,000 lives, came to the Buddha seeking ordination, many people objected. How can a criminal become a monk? They asked. And the Buddha simply said, he has awakened. Isn't that the goal of all of us? And Angulimala, once feared by all, became a saint, an arahant, a beacon for those who thought they were too far gone to change. If someone like him can walk the path of awakening, then I truly believe you and I, with all our small mistakes and quiet regrets, can begin again, starting today. Remember this: you are not how many times you've fallen. You are the one still rising. You are not the sorrow of yesterday. You are the hope unfolding in this moment. So when you say to yourself, "I am not my past, I am potential," you are opening a door where the light can finally come in. And maybe tomorrow, you'll wake up, not in the shadows of regret, but in the soft dawn of a soul becoming. There's a strange habit many of us share. Every morning, as we wake up, we rush to listen to the world before we ever listen to ourselves. We check our phones, scroll the news, open social media, hear someone complain. The radio talks about markets, wars, gas prices, the economy. And before long, our mind is swept away by voices that don't even belong to us. Have you ever felt that way? You haven't even felt your own breath yet. Haven't paused to ask, "What do I really need today?" before getting pulled into the noise of the world. A woman in her late 52nd once told me, "Venerable, I don't hear my own voice anymore. Every day, I chase what others expect. My boss says one thing, I say yes. My children say another, I nod. But me? I don't even know what I want." I looked at her gently and said, "It's not that your inner voice is gone. It's just been drowned out by outer noise for too long. Imagine there's a beautiful bronze bell inside your heart. But if you live in a marketplace, where every day is full of noise, arguments, pushing and pulling, you'll never hear that bell. Not because it doesn't ring, but because you're not quiet enough to listen. Your inner voice doesn't scream. It doesn't argue. It speaks softly like an old friend, waiting until the world has settled down to whisper the truth. If you don't hear yourself first, the world will define you for you. What you should do today, how you should feel, what you should buy, who you should be like. And before you know it, you're living like a shadow. So busy, so driven, but no longer sure where you're even going. The Buddha once said, "No one is a better refuge than yourself." He didn't mean we should shut out the world. But before we lean on others, we must first return to our own heart. In my decades as a monk in America, I've heard countless people ask, "Venerable, what should I do with my life? What career should I choose? Should I stay in this marriage?" But those aren't questions that can be answered with one-size-fits-all advice, because only you know what you truly lack deep inside. And the answer isn't out there. It lives in the quiet places you rarely give yourself permission to enter. Listening to yourself doesn't mean closing your ears to the world. It means getting clear on your inner voice before letting in all the others. Like someone who knows they love the color blue. When they walk into a marketplace full of color, they aren't overwhelmed. They choose what fits because they already know what they're looking for. I often tell older students, before you read the news, listen to your breath. Before you check email, read a line of Dharma instead. Something simple like, "I am alive. I am breathing. I am here for myself." Just 5 minutes. Place your hand on your chest. Close your eyes. Don't try to achieve anything. Just listen. When you do this every morning, you begin to tell the difference between your voice and society's echo. Some people live so kindly, so diligently, but deep down, they're living just to be accepted. A 62-year-old man once said to me, "I've spent my whole life trying to please others, and now I don't know who I am anymore." I gently replied, "Then maybe now is the time to come home and ask yourself, if no one judged me, if I didn't have to try, who would I be?" And you know what? Many people cry when they ask that question. Not because it hurts, but because it's been so long since they last heard themselves. I'm not asking you to shut out the world. I'm asking you to make a space inside that's quiet, a place to return to every day. A place not to escape life, but to see it more clearly. Not to disconnect, but to reconnect more honestly. And tomorrow morning, before you open your phone, or the radio, or the television, open your heart and gently ask, what do I really need today? And you might be surprised to find that the voice within you has always known the way. All it ever needed was for you to listen before the world speaks too loudly. I want to begin today with a very simple question, but I hope you answer it honestly from the heart. Do you believe you deserve to be loved fully and unconditionally? Do you believe you deserve to succeed without having to prove your worth? And do you believe you deserve to be at peace, not when everything is perfect, but right now, just as you are? Over the years, I've met so many people in their 40-second, 60-second, even 70-second still carrying the weight of not enough, not good enough, not smart enough, not successful enough, not lovable enough, not at ease enough. One morning after meditation, a woman in her late 52nd came up to me quietly and said, "Venerable, I've spent my whole life trying to earn love, but now I realize I never believed I deserved it in the first place." I looked at her gently and said, "Sometimes people do love us, but we can't feel it. Because if you don't believe you're worthy, no one else can fill that gap." I told her about the Buddha, a teacher who understood the human heart at its deepest level. In the Anguttara Nikaya, he once said, "Among all the people you will meet in this life, not one is more deserving of your love than you." It sounds simple, but to believe that is a journey of healing. Imagine standing in front of a child, maybe 5 years old. They've just fallen down, scraped their knees, eyes full of tears. Would you scold them? Or would you kneel down, hold them, and whisper, "It's okay. You're still lovable. You're still the same child everyone adores"? And yet, when the one who falls is ourselves, we don't offer that same tenderness. We blame. We judge. We push ourselves harder without mercy. But real love doesn't demand perfection. Real success doesn't come from burnout. And peace isn't something we win after conquering every storm. You are worthy simply because you exist, because you are a living expression of life, of the universe, of the Dharma itself. In Buddhism, we call this Buddha nature, the innate potential for awakening in every being. You don't need to become someone else. You don't need to climb to the top of society's ladder. You just need to come home and realize, right here, right now, I am enough. I am worthy of love, success, and peace. In my time living and teaching in Buddhist centers across the U.S., I've sat with elders from every background. Some were doctors. Some went through bankruptcy. Some were devoted parents. Some walked away from their families. But in the end, they all sat side by side drinking tea, chanting sutras, and breathing together. And I noticed something beautiful. Those who learned to see themselves with compassion healed the fastest. They weren't waiting for someone else to apologize. They weren't waiting for the world to approve. They simply laid down the whip they used to punish themselves and began to live with an open heart. A major study from UC Berkeley found that people who practice self-compassion have greater resilience, mental strength, and lower rates of anxiety and depression. In other words, forgiving yourself doesn't make you weak. Believing you're worthy of love doesn't make you delusional. It's the very foundation of a healthy, honest life. You don't need to do anything grand. Just each morning, place your hand over your heart, take a slow breath, and speak to yourself as you would to your dearest friend. I deserve to be loved. I deserve a life that feels whole. I deserve peace not because I'm perfect, but because I am me. At first, you might not believe it. but keep saying it. And one day, your heart will begin to hear the truth in those words. If you've spent a lifetime chasing approval, if you've ever asked yourself, do I even deserve this? Then today pause, because I want you to know, you are worthy even with a messy past. You are worthy even if you're still unsure where life is headed. You are worthy not because you've done enough, but because you've always been enough. Love is the home you can always return to. Success is living in alignment with your truest values. Peace is no longer arguing with your own soul. So go into this world with a quiet confidence. I don't need to fight for it because it's already within me. And when you live like that, all that is good will find its way to you. Just like a flower blooms when the sun finally touches it. There's something quite strange when you think about it. So many people go through life always searching for something. But the more they search, the more empty they feel inside. They think they need a better job to feel complete. They believe they need someone who really understands them to feel happy. They chase a bigger house, a higher paycheck, a compliment from someone important just to sleep a little easier at night. And yet, even after achieving all of it, some still sit in silence and whisper the same truth. I still feel like something's missing. Have you ever felt that way? I once met a woman at the temple who had just retired. Her kids were grown, her finances were stable. And yet she said, I feel empty, like I'm just passing through each day without knowing why. I gently asked her, have you ever just sat quietly with yourself without scrolling your phone, without looking for entertainment, just to listen to your own heart? She paused and said, I've always been afraid of that silence. I smiled softly and said, silence isn't scary when you realize everything you've been searching for has always lived inside of you. That's not a feel-good slogan. It's a truth that the Buddha shared thousands of years ago. In the Lotus Sutra, the Buddha tells the story of a poor man struggling through life, unaware that he's carrying a priceless jewel sewn into the lining of his robe. Only when he meets a wise friend does he remember, the treasure has always been with you. You just never looked closely enough. Just like that, inside each of us, even in our mistakes, our regrets, our confusion, there exists a deep source of strength, a quiet wisdom, and a peace that has never been broken. Imagine standing in a forest, completely lost. It's dark. You're scared. There's no signal, no one nearby. And then you remember there's a flashlight in your pocket. You forgot because you were so afraid. But the moment you pull it out and turn it on, the path becomes clear. You're no longer terrified, not because the forest changed, but because you remembered the light in your hands. I've seen this truth play out over and over again. People who thought they were broken by grief months later became the ones holding their family together. Former addicts who once hated themselves now meditating at sunrise and raising their children with compassion. What changed them? Not a miracle from outside, but a reawakening of something sacred within. In Buddhist teaching, we call it the pure original nature, the Buddha nature that exists in all beings. The Buddha wasn't a god handing out miracles. He was just a human like us who remembered what was already inside him. And then, he showed us how to come home to that same place within ourselves. Psychologists today call it inner resources, the ability to heal, to love, to navigate life from a place of clarity. Like a tree already holding life in its roots, it only needs time and sunlight to grow upward. So no, you don't need another person to make you whole. You don't need another degree, another title, another stamp of approval. You only need to pause and activate what's already yours. It doesn't have to be dramatic. Just take a few moments each morning before the world rushes in. Place your hand on your chest, breathe slowly, and gently say to yourself, I am not missing anything. I just forgot the light that's within me. Maybe at first, you won't fully believe it, But if you keep returning to that practice, something inside you will shift. If right now you're searching for something out there, a sense of meaning, a new love, a fresh faith, take a pause and ask yourself quietly, am I really missing something? Or have I simply forgotten? Everything you need already lives inside of you. Like a garden with seeds, waiting for care. Like a small flame, needing only shelter from the wind. And one day, you'll feel full again. Not because you gained more, but because you finally returned to the light you've carried all along. Have you ever felt like, no matter how hard you try, it never feels like enough? You wake up early. You work hard. You're kind to others. And still, there's this quiet voice in the back of your mind. I should have done better. If only I hadn't made that mistake. I'm still not good enough. Let me say something to you honestly, from the heart. You don't have to be perfect to be worthy. You just need to keep growing a little more each day in your beautifully human way. A woman in her 52nd once came to a weekend meditation retreat I led. She had been an executive, a mother, a wife, and she said to me, "Teacher, I've always felt pressure. As a mom, I wanted to be perfect. As a wife, I wasn't allowed to feel tired. At work, I had to prove I was better than others. And in the end, I don't even know who I am anymore." I looked at her gently and said, "You didn't come here to become a perfect version of yourself. You came here to learn how to live more softly, more truthfully, more kindly with yourself. Perfection is a finish line that doesn't exist yet. So many exhaust themselves chasing it. Every time you think you've reached it, it moves one step further. You can spend your whole life trying to be enough in the eyes of others and still have no idea what enough feels like for you. You've probably seen people who are high achievers, successful, respected, admired, and yet they still feel sad, anxious, or alone. Not because they didn't work hard enough, but because they were never taught this simple truth. Progress is enough, and honesty is more valuable than perfection. Imagine a toddler learning to walk. She falls. She stumbles. Her knees shake. She falls again. Do you yell at her? No, you smile, open your arms, and say, "That's it. Keep going. You're doing great." So why, when you fall in life, do you speak to yourself so harshly? Why, when you haven't made it yet, do you call yourself a failure? The Buddha never asked us to become enlightened overnight. He said, even one drop at a time can fill the jar. Practice step by step. Wake up a little more each day. Let go of anger, ignorance, and attachment, one breath at a time. I once asked an old monk who had practiced for over 50 years, "Do you feel completely peaceful now?" He smiled and said, "Some days I still get angry just like anyone else, but I catch it quicker now. I don't punish myself like I used to. And that is progress." That's what real growth looks like. Not perfection. Just waking up a little sooner than yesterday, and that's already precious. I've lived alongside many people in their 62nd and 72nd, and I've noticed something. Those who still try to be perfect often suffer more. Those who accept they are lifelong students tend to feel lighter and freer. A 8-year-old woman in my class once said, "I no longer try to be a perfect mom. I just want to understand my child a little more each day, love him with fewer conditions, and that's enough." And her eyes, they lit up like a flower blooming late in the season. According to Stanford research, people with a growth mindset, the belief that we can improve little by little, are more resilient and less prone to depression than those obsessed with being perfect. Why? Because perfection creates fear of failure. But growth gives us permission to fall, to learn, to rise again with compassion for ourselves. It's that simple. Instead of asking, "Am I good enough yet?" try asking, Am I moving in the right direction? Did I learn something from yesterday? Am I being more honest with myself today? Then smile and say to your heart, today, I choose progress, not perfection. We weren't born to be statues flawless, but frozen. We were born to learn, to evolve, to stumble and grow and live fully. So if your steps feel slow right now, it's okay. Slow is still progress. If you're making mistakes, don't lose hope. Recognizing your mistakes is a sign of awakening. You don't have to become anyone else. Just become yourself a little better each day. And believe me, life doesn't demand perfection. It just asks that you be sincere in your becoming, and that alone is beautiful. Have you ever woken up with a vague, heavy feeling in your chest like something inside you is still unresolved? It's not because you're lazy. It's not because you lack willpower. It's because somewhere deep inside, fear has quietly taken the wheel. Fear of failure, fear of loss, fear of being misunderstood, abandoned, not enough, and sometimes even fear of the very change your soul is longing for. But today, I want to gently remind you of something simple but powerful. No fear can extinguish the fire within me, the fire of life, the fire of love, the fire of quiet faith that I can get through this. One evening, after a Dharma talk in San Jose, a man in his 42nd approached me, his eyes filled with tears. He said, "I know I have potential, but fear keeps tying me down. I'm afraid I'll mess up. I'm afraid I won't be accepted. And so, I stay stuck." I looked at him for a moment, then shared a story about the Buddha. Long ago, the Buddha was harshly insulted by a farmer. The Buddha remained silent. The man grew more furious. "I've cursed you so much, why don't you respond?" The Buddha smiled gently and said, "If someone offers you a gift and you don't accept it, who does the gift belong to? Well, to the giver, of course. Then I do not accept your anger, it remains yours." The farmer stood speechless. You see, fear is like that unwanted gift. If you don't accept it, it can't control you. If you don't feed it, it can't burn you. Because within you there is a deeper fire, a steadier flame, one that no storm in the world can blow out. The question is, do you still remember it? Imagine your mind is like an oil lamp. Fear is the wind, sudden, erratic, unpredictable. But if your wick is steady, if there's enough oil from mindfulness, from your inner practice, from quiet confidence, then the stronger the wind, the steadier the flame. That's what longtime practitioners understand. It's not about having no fear. It's about not letting fear be in charge. Over the years, I've met all kinds of people, from successful CEOs to elderly seekers finding their spiritual path in their final chapters. And I've come to see the brave are not those without fear. They are the ones who keep moving forward even with fear in their hearts. A 72-year-old woman once told me, "You know, aging scares me. I'm afraid of being alone, getting sick, or facing the end. But every time I sit quietly with those fears, I feel a little more peace. They start to shrink, and for the first time, I'm learning to love myself again." In the Satipatthana Sutta, the Buddha taught us to observe our feelings and mental states, not to push them away, but to simply see them. When fear arises, we don't need to fight it. Just notice it. Recognize fear is present. Breathe with it. Sit beside it. And soon, it passes like a thin cloud moving across the sky. Because fear is not your enemy. It's a messenger quietly delivering a truth. You need to return and take care of yourself. Neuroscience has now shown what the Buddha taught thousands of years ago. When we consciously name our fear, the panic centers in the brain begin to calm. Just putting a name to your fear that's already 1 foot out of it. As the Buddha said, to know clearly what is happening, that alone is the beginning of freedom. So yes, you might be scared, but you still move forward. You might tremble, but you still show up for today. And deeper than that, no fear can extinguish the fire in me. Because that fire, it doesn't come from me. It comes from the awakened nature inside every one of us. Maybe right now, you're going through something hard. Financial stress, relationship pain. Your health isn't what it used to be. But please don't forget, you are not just what's happening in your life. You are the quiet strength that gets you through it. With compassion, awareness, and courage. No storm lasts forever. No fear is permanent. As long as you keep your flame alive, even the smallest spark, the night will eventually give way to morning. Have you ever felt like you needed permission just to be yourself? Permission to speak your truth. Permission to live differently. Permission to be happy. And as the years go by, you slowly begin to forget that you were once light. Not a flashy, loud, attention-seeking light, but a gentle one, like a quiet lamp softly glowing in the corner of a dark room. And today I want to remind you, you are light, and you don't need anyone's permission to shine. I remember a woman in her 52nd once visited my temple in California. She had spent her whole life being a mother, a wife, a dedicated employee, always living for others. But after her husband passed away and her children grew up, she finally started living for herself. She told me, "Master, the first time I took an art class, I felt guilty. Because for so many years, I thought my happiness had to wait for someone else's approval. But when I held that paintbrush, I cried. I realized I still had light inside." Imagine walking into a dark room, holding a small lamp. You don't need applause. You don't need the crowd's approval. You just turn it on and the room changes. Light doesn't ask for permission to shine. It's simply island. And its presence alone is enough to scatter the dark. You are the same. In over 30 years of walking with spiritual seekers, I've noticed something beautiful and bittersweet. Those who carry the truest light often fear being a burden. They hesitate to speak up. They're afraid to make others uncomfortable. They live humbly, but sometimes they forget themselves. But light doesn't burden anyone. Only those afraid of the light will find it too bright. Those walking in darkness, they need it more than ever. The Buddha once said, "Be a light unto yourself. Atta Deepa Viharatha." It doesn't mean waiting for someone to light your flame. It doesn't mean waiting for validation from others. It means you light your own way and walk it. It's not about ego. It's about awakening the inner strength, the Buddha nature already within you. Psychologists have found that when we act from inner purpose, not for external approval, we activate the part of the brain that governs inner fulfillment. In other words, we stop chasing eyes around us. We become confident, centered, radiant. And the miracle is that light spreads. No shouting, no proving, just being real is enough. Have you ever wanted to chase a passion, but feared being judged? Wanted to say, "I love you," but feared looking weak? Wanted to rest, but feared being called selfish? If so, maybe you've been waiting for someone to say it's okay. But the path to awakening doesn't require permission. It requires awakening. I've met so many people on this journey, and I tell them just as I'm telling you now, you don't need anyone's approval to be kind. You don't need permission to live honestly with your heart. You don't need to prove anything to the world to be a warm, glowing light. Because simply this, you are light, and light does not need permission to shine. Have you ever felt like you were walking through life carrying a mountain on your back? Not a physical weight, but the weight of your past. Invisible burdens, pain, resentment, regret, expectations, self-blame, fear. Sometimes we think we're moving forward, but really, we're just dragging the past behind us, exhausted, off course, and slowly breaking down. And then, one day, maybe even today, you pause, you take a breath, and you whisper to your heart, I let go so I can walk lighter on this path of awakening. I remember a woman in her 62nd once visited our temple in Santa Barbara. Tears welled up in her eyes as she said, Master, I can't forget the person who hurt me, but I also can't carry this pain any longer. I looked into her tired, worn eyes and asked, if you hold a burning coal, planning to throw it at someone, who gets burned first? She went silent, and then she cried, not from pain, but from finally understanding. Imagine you're walking along a forest trail. Your backpack is full of heavy stones, each one a burden you haven't let go of. At first, you can manage. But the farther you walk, the more your shoulders ache, your steps slow down, your breath grows shallow. And then, you see someone walking past you, light, calm, unburdened, carrying nothing. They don't give advice. They just smile and keep walking. And for the first time, you stop and wonder, do I really need to carry all this anymore? In all my years of teaching the Dharma, I've met so many people who didn't come to Buddhism for theology or philosophy. They came because they were simply too heavy. A woman in her 42nd, burdened with guilt for abandoning her mother. A man in his 72nd, grieving over his son's addiction. An elderly woman who quietly said, I've resented my husband for decades, and I'm just tired now. In every story, there's a common thread. People think they have to carry their pain, as if it's some kind of moral duty. But the Buddha never taught that. In the Satipatthana Sutta, the Buddha said, contemplate the body in the body, see its arising and ceasing, and let go of attachment. Even this body, the one we've cared for and protected all our lives. The Buddha encouraged us to observe and gently release our clinging to it. If we're asked to loosen our grasp even on the body, then how much more so should we let go of resentment, anger, or heartbreak? Letting go is not losing. Letting go is understanding. And with understanding, the burden releases on its own. Modern neuroscience has confirmed this ancient wisdom. When we hold on to resentment, the amygdala, the fear and stress center of the brain, stays active. Our heart rate rises, sleep suffers, and our immune system weakens. But when we consciously choose to let go, the prefrontal cortex, the area linked to compassion and clarity, lights up. In simple terms, letting go isn't weakness. It's wisdom. It's the action of someone awake. Have you ever forgiven someone, but still felt a bitterness deep inside? Told yourself, I'm fine, yet felt your chest tighten at night? Felt haunted by a past memory, even when no one brings it up? If so, you haven't truly let go yet. You've just avoided the pain, not faced it or transformed it. I'm not asking you to forget. I'm not denying your pain is real. But I want you to hear this clearly. You deserve a lighter journey, and it begins the moment you choose to release. Letting go isn't about losing. Letting go is about coming back to yourself. And on the path of awakening, only when we walk light can we walk far. Have you ever thought that discipline is harsh? That it means forcing yourself to live inside a box? That it's about rules, restrictions, and losing your freedom? I've heard many people say that. And I get it, I really do. Because in the early years of my monastic life, I used to see discipline like a wall separating me from freedom and simplicity. But as the years passed, I began to see more clearly, discipline is actually one of the deepest forms of love. Not love for others, but love for yourself. Imagine a father who wakes up early every morning to make breakfast for his child. He never complains. He never skips a day. He never shows up late. Outsiders might say, he's too strict, too rigid. But if you ask that child years later, they'll say, my dad never let me go hungry. My dad never broke a promise. My dad loved me not just with words, but with consistency. Discipline is what love looks like in action. One day, a man in his 52nd came to the temple and asked me, Master, how can I love myself without spoiling myself? I looked at him, a man seasoned by life, gray beginning to show in his hair, and replied, when you set an alarm to wake up early and meditate, when you resist that late-night slice of cake, even though you're craving it, when you choose to sit quietly with your breath instead of numbing out with television, that is love, showing up through discipline. He was quiet for a moment, and ever since, whenever I see him, he greets me with a bow and says, Master, I'm still keeping my precepts regularly. Years ago, I lived in a mountain temple near Oregon. In winter, the snow blanketed every path, and still every morning, at 4:30 a.m., the monks would rise in silence. They would walk slowly through the dark, and then sit in stillness, surrounded by candlelight. No one forced them. There were no alarms, no warnings, no shouting or commands. Only love. Love for themselves and for each other, expressed quietly through discipline. You see, discipline doesn't always need words. Sometimes it just needs a quiet commitment to yourself. In Buddhism, discipline is not separate from the spiritual path. Sila, ethics, is discipline for our actions. Samadhi, concentration, is discipline for our mind. And panya, wisdom, is the fruit that blooms from both. The Buddha never told us to be rigid. He said, one who has morality and concentration is like a clear, still lake. You can see all the way to the bottom. No murkiness, no turbulence, no confusion. And even in our daily lives, we can keep that inner lake clear, not through grand gestures, but through small, steady practices. A regular breath, a kind word, eating on time, resting when needed, waking up with intention. Have you ever told yourself, I'll get up early tomorrow to meditate, and then slept till noon? Have you promised to stay calm, but then snapped the moment someone misunderstood you? We've all been there. But discipline doesn't mean never failing. It means coming back, no matter how many times you fall. Neuroscience studies show that every time we complete a healthy habit, like morning meditation, hydrating regularly, or turning off our phone by 10 p.m., the brain releases a gentle dose of dopamine. Not the flashy dopamine you get from sugar or social media, but a slow, quiet kind, the kind that nurtures deep contentment. Discipline builds joy, not loud, dramatic joy, but the kind that stays. I'm not saying you have to change your whole life tonight. I'm just inviting you to look again. If you truly love yourself, can you show it not with words, but with small, repeated acts of care? Letting go is one half of awakening, but staying steady, lovingly disciplined, day after day, that's the other half. There are days when we look in the mirror, And what we see is not weakness, but exhaustion. Not because we're fragile, but because we've been strong for too long. Have you ever felt that? And then, one day, you find yourself quietly asking, how can I stay strong without closing my heart? How can I live in a chaotic world and still let my soul feel beauty? Today, I want to invite you to sit with me. Let's explore something deep together. That your mind can be steady like a mountain, your heart can stay open like the sky, and your soul can remain alive in every breath. I remember a Buddhist student in his 62nd once said to me, his voice trembling, "Master, I think I've become numb. I don't get hurt like I used to, but I don't feel deeply anymore either." I looked at him and gently said, "It's not that you've gone numb. It's that you've closed the doors of your heart after being hurt too many times. You are like an ancient bronze drum, strong and solid on the outside, weathered by many storms. But inside, there is still resonance. All it takes is one gentle, honest touch, and the sound will ring again, echoing far." A strong heart doesn't mean a closed one. A strong heart knows how to stay open without being swallowed. It knows how to love without losing itself. In the Anguttara Nikaya, the Buddha told a story of a monk meditating alone in the forest. Some villagers came and insulted him, but the monk didn't respond with anger. He didn't flinch. He simply smiled, his heart unmoved, not because he was passive, but because he had a deep inner strength, a heart no longer shaken by praise or blame. Many people think being alive means being loud, fiery, bursting with energy. But sometimes, true aliveness is quiet, like a lotus blooming on a still lake. Not towering, not flashy, just present, pure, alive in stillness. A soul that is alive still trembles in the presence of beauty, still feels others' pain, and still knows how to pause when the world rushes too fast. Modern neuroscience confirms this too. People with open hearts tend to have more stable levels of oxytocin and serotonin, the hormones of trust, calm, and happiness. And studies in compassion meditation show regular meditators don't just improve their immune system, they feel deeper happiness, reduced stress, and greater empathy. In other words, true strength doesn't come from resistance, but from soft release without collapse. I once had a fellow monk. He'd lived in the monastery over 30 years. A young student once asked him, "Master, how can I stop getting hurt?" He smiled and replied gently, "Open your heart, but don't forget your wisdom. Opening your heart doesn't mean letting people hurt you. It means you keep living honestly, even when others don't meet your expectations." Have you ever tried so hard to be strong that you were afraid to cry? Felt that if you showed weakness, others might lose respect? Feared that if you forgave someone, they'd take advantage? I've felt all of that too. And I've learned this. When my mind is strong, I don't need to prove anything. When my heart is open, I'm not afraid of rejection. When my soul is alive, I don't need to chase after anyone to feel worthy. You don't have to tense up to be strong. You just need to return to yourself. Each morning, remind yourself, my mind is strong because I've walked through pain and still choose to love. My heart is open because I no longer want to punish others with resentment. And my soul is alive because I haven't lost myself in this busy world. And if today you feel weak, please know that too is part of your strength. Because those who are truly strong are the ones brave enough to be soft, to be open, to be vulnerable, and still keep walking. If these words touch something in you, leave a comment below. It doesn't have to be long. It just has to be real. Because when you put your truth into words, you're not just alive, you're alive from within. Have you ever stood at a crossroads in life, knowing deep down what the right path was, but still chose the easier one? Let me ask you honestly, how many times have you avoided doing what's right just because it felt inconvenient? You didn't speak the truth because you didn't want to upset anyone. You didn't walk away because you were afraid of being alone. You didn't make a change because starting over felt too hard. A Buddhist student once came to me with tears in his eyes. He said, "I know what I should do, but my heart resists it because it's uncomfortable. I'm afraid to start again. Afraid to face the truth. And afraid that I'm not strong enough." I looked him in the eye and said gently, "You don't need to be comfortable. You need to be courageous." Imagine this. You're standing on a narrow wooden bridge. It connects where you are now to the life you long for. A life of truth, freedom, and deep peace. But the bridge is shaky. The wind is strong. Below you, a steep drop. Behind you, it's warm, familiar, and safe, but also small, confining. Will you move forward or turn back? Courage doesn't mean you're not afraid. It means you keep walking even with a trembling heart. We often think, "I'll act when I stop being scared." But the truth is, fear only fades once you start doing the thing that scares you. The Buddha never said, "Go seek an easy life." He said, "The wise do not seek comfort. They seek awakening." Anguttara Nikaya. I still remember the day I entered the monastery. I was barely in my 20s, leaving behind a good job, a loving family, a stable life, for a path of renunciation. Many people asked me, why walk away from all that security to choose such a difficult path? The answer was simple. Because I knew if I stayed, I'd be comfortable, but I would never live in alignment with what my heart truly called for. Monastic life isn't about escaping the world. It's about finding the courage to walk against your old habits. Every day, we face moments where we must choose between what's easy and what's right. Neuroscience confirms this too. When we repeatedly choose what's easy and familiar, our brain releases short bursts of dopamine, but it doesn't lead to growth. Growth only happens when we step outside our comfort zone. That's when the brain begins creating new neural connections, which help us learn, mature, and expand our consciousness. In other words, discomfort can be a sign that you're growing. Have you ever stayed in a relationship that suffocated you because leaving felt too hard? Ever wanted to change careers, but the idea of starting over left you exhausted just thinking about it? You're not lazy. You're just afraid. And that's okay. But let me tell you this, not as a teacher, but as someone who's walked ahead. If you always choose comfort, you may exist, but you'll never truly live. Comfort is temporary. Courage is the beginning of freedom. Choose to speak up, even when it's awkward. Choose to apologize, even when pride says no. Choose to stop when you realize you're going the wrong way. Choose to love again, even if your heart's been broken. And sometimes, choose to let go instead of clinging to what is already past. Every small act of courage brings you back to yourself. Today, I'm not asking you to do something grand. I'm just inviting you to make one brave choice, even if it feels hard. Wake up 10 minutes earlier and sit in silence. Forgive someone who never apologized. Walk away from something that dries up your spirit. Stay quiet instead of proving yourself. And most of all, take the next step, even if your heart is still nervous. I choose courage, not comfort. Because I don't just want to live long. I want to live true. Have you ever felt like you were living a life that wasn't truly yours? You work. You take care of others. You try your best every day. But deep down, there's still an emptiness. Not because you lack money, or love, or comfort, but because somewhere along the way you lost touch with yourself. I've met so many people like this. At 40, at 60, even at 75. Sitting across from me, eyes searching for something as they ask, "Venerable, who am I really? And what kind of life was I born to live?" Imagine a seed planted in the earth. No one knows what kind of tree it'll become. It doesn't bloom right away. It quietly grows roots in the dark soil, unseen. But inside, it knows. It knows that one day, it will rise. It doesn't need approval. It doesn't need permission. It just needs to become what it already island. And you too. You don't need to live for other people's expectations. You don't have to mold yourself into someone you're not. You only need to become yourself. One day, an elderly woman came to the temple. She sat in the meditation hall for a long time, then sighed deeply. "I've spent my whole life being a mother, a wife, a good daughter-in-law. Everyone says I'm selfless. But the truth is, I don't know who I am." I looked at her and gently asked, "If you weren't a mother, a wife, or a daughter-in-law, who would you want to be?" She was silent for a while, then whispered, "I want to be someone who is at peace." That's it. Not famous, not perfect. Just at peace. Just living a life that honors what her heart quietly longs for. In the Samyutta Nikaya, the Buddha taught, the wise do not cling to a fixed identity. They observe and allow their true nature to reveal itself through mindfulness. That means you don't have to define yourself right away. You don't need to label yourself as a good person, a failure, or someone who's broken. You simply need to live with awareness each day, each moment, and your true self will begin to emerge. No forcing, no pretending, no locking yourself into the roles others have given you. In my monastic life, there were years when I tried so hard to be the ideal monk. I copied the way great teachers walked. I recited every chant perfectly. I sat exactly as I was taught. But my heart still felt off. Something was missing. Until one day, I sat alone beneath an old Bodhi tree, and I asked myself, what if I was only meant to be someone who loves deeply, lives sincerely, and stays awake to life? And for the first time in years, my heart felt like it had come home. Science also tells us that when you live in alignment with your inner values, your brain releases oxytocin, the hormone that calms stress and deepens your connection with yourself and others. But when you live out of sync with your true self, even if you have wealth, success, or recognition, you can still feel deeply empty. Have you ever done all the right things, but still felt unsatisfied? Have you ever lived according to someone else's expectations, only to one day realize you'd never truly listened to your own voice? If you have, you're not alone. I'm here simply as someone who's walked ahead, to say this to you with all my heart. It's never too late to come back to yourself, to live the life you were born to live. There is a light inside you that no one can extinguish. There is a voice inside you that only you can hear. And there is a path that only you can walk. I'm still becoming the person I was born to be. Not a copy, not a performance, but my true self, sincere, whole, and awake. There's one thing I wish I had learned earlier in my monastic life. Protecting your energy isn't selfish. It's one of the deepest acts of compassion for yourself and for the world. Have you ever felt completely drained? Not because you didn't care, but because you gave your love without knowing how to keep anything for yourself? I want you to imagine something. You're a clear glass pitcher of water, and every day people come to you asking for just a little. Family, friends, co-workers, even strangers. And you pour because you're kind. You pour because you think that's what good people do. But what happens if no one ever refills your pitcher? You run dry. There's nothing left to give. And slowly, you become irritable, tired, disconnected. Not because you're a bad person, but because you've emptied yourself without replenishment. One day, after a Dharma talk, a middle-aged woman came to me and said through tears, "I've given my whole life to my husband, my kids, my parents. Why do I feel so empty, so stuck?" I gently asked her, "When you're exhausted, do you allow yourself to say, 'I'm tired'? When you're hurting, do you take time to hold your own heart? Or do you just keep pushing through and quietly wither?" She cried even more. Not because I judged her, but because for the first time, someone saw the pain she had caused herself. Modern neuroscience confirms this. Emotional and mental energy are limited. The more invisible pressures you carry, the more likely you are to burn out. And in Buddhism, this isn't new. The Buddha taught, before you can help others, you must train your own mind. To save someone from a fire, you yourself must not be burning. He never told us to lose ourselves for others. He taught us to care for ourselves first, wisely and mindfully, because if our light dims, we will lead others into darkness. Protecting your energy doesn't mean building walls. It means turning on your inner lamp, so you know when to open and when to gently close. There was a time when everyone seemed to need something from me. "Master, please give me advice. Master, just listen. Master, help me through this pain." And I did. I listened. I gave. I held space. Until one day, I sat down in silence and realized I was empty. No more tenderness. No peace when I meditated. Just noise and fatigue. And in that moment, I understood. If I didn't learn to protect my own energy, I'd have nothing left to offer except my exhaustion. You know, a candle can burn beautifully through the night, but if a soft breeze keeps blowing on it nonstop, it will flicker out. Not because the light failed, but because it wasn't protected. You are that light, and you must learn to guard it. Not to hide, but so it can stay alive. In the Metta Sutta, the Buddha's teaching on loving kindness, he didn't just speak about love for others. He included ourselves. May I be free from anxiety. May I be safe. May I be happy. Compassion must include yourself. Otherwise, your love for others becomes a performance, not a practice with roots. How many times have you smiled when your soul was tired? How many times have you said, "I'm fine," while your heart whispered, "I'm falling apart"? How many times have you mistaken self-sacrifice for love, when really, you were quietly breaking inside? From this day forward, I choose to protect my energy fiercely, because I know, if I don't do it, no one else will. And I do it with deep compassion, not out of anger, not out of resentment, but because I want to keep loving in a healthy way. If these words speak to your heart, pause today, take one deep breath, and gently ask yourself, am I truly taking care of my energy? If the answer is not really, then start softly but firmly. You don't need anyone's permission to live a life that includes loving yourself. Dear friend, I no longer believe in coincidence the way I used to. The deeper I walk this spiritual path, the more clearly I see nothing is random. Every teaching that reaches us, every person we meet, every challenge, every opportunity, they all carry the echoes of seeds we've planted long ago. Have you ever felt that way? Like the right door only opens when something inside you is finally ready. A student once shared with me, back then, I was constantly searching, looking for the right retreat, the right teacher, the right Dharma talk. But strangely, the things I truly needed didn't appear until I started coming back to myself. She told me that the moment she stopped chasing and simply paused in silence, someone randomly gifted her a Buddhist book. She opened it, and the first line she read said, "When the student is ready, the teacher will appear." And in that moment, she cried, because something in her heart knew it was true. The opportunities that showed up weren't because she kept looking harder. They arrived because her inner practice had become sincere. I want you to picture this: a wide open field in the early morning. The grass is still wet with dew. The sun hasn't yet risen. And you are planting seeds. You don't know when the sprouts will appear, but if you care for the soil, water it gently, and stay grounded in quiet trust, one day, when the conditions are right, life will grow. Spiritual practice is the same. When you stay mindful and live with genuine goodness, you don't have to chase opportunities. They will find you. I've been teaching the Dharma here in the U.S. for over 30 years, and I've seen so many people discover Buddhism, not because they were looking for a temple, but because they were looking for peace inside their own heart. Some found it after a crisis, others after a divorce, a diagnosis, a loss. And at their lowest point, it wasn't a grand lecture or book that saved them. Sometimes, it was just one quiet meditation or a simple YouTube video that shifted everything. I still remember an older man, 68 years old, who had struggled with alcohol for over 30 years. He stumbled across one of my Dharma talks online. And in that video, I said, "Don't ask why your life is full of suffering. Ask what you're planting for the life that's coming next." He came to the temple and said just one thing: "Master, I don't know how to practice yet, but I don't want to live in confusion anymore." I didn't lecture him. I simply invited him to sit and breathe. In the Dhammapada, the Buddha taught, everything begins with the mind. The mind is the forerunner. The mind creates all things. When your heart starts turning toward awareness, you become like a magnet, attracting the very situations that match that inner clarity. If you plant seeds of kindness and truth, then the rains of opportunity will naturally fall in the right place. There's no need to push or force. Just live well. Live honestly. And what's meant to come will come. Have you ever noticed that when your mind is frantic or afraid, everything that shows up in your life also feels chaotic? But when you're calm, when you come home to mindfulness, life responds differently. Things arrive more gently, more wisely just when you need them. Opportunities, you see, are not random gifts from the sky. They are reflections of your inner world. They are drawn to the version of yourself that you're becoming. There was a time when I too felt restless. I wanted to speak on bigger stages. I wanted to reach more people, to open new centers. But eventually, I realized the more I chased opportunities, the further I strayed from my own path. And it wasn't until I simply sat still in a small meditation room with a quiet and honest heart that invitations began arriving. Fellow seekers appeared. Communities formed. Even young people searching for a deeper truth found their way to me. Not because I reached out, but because I had become someone worth reaching toward. So today, I gently remind you, you don't need to rush. You don't need to force doors open. Just keep walking the path, planting seeds, and tending your heart, and the right things will arrive exactly when they're meant to. Have you ever felt like you were being pulled in 100 different directions? On one side, responsibilities. On the other, emotions. One voice whispers your old forgotten dreams, while another voice quietly reminds you of your fear of failure. I've met so many people living in that exact tension. They wake up each day like they're being swept away by a flood. Housework, kids, deadlines, social media, confusion, news cycles. And by the time night falls, they sigh and ask, "Why do I feel so lost?" I want you to imagine standing in the middle of a forest on a stormy day. The trees around you are swaying hard, leaves flying everywhere. The wind howls with uncertainty. You're standing there, no shelter. And in that moment, you have two choices. You can run with the wind and lose your direction, or you can stand still, take a deep breath, and reconnect with the steady axis inside you. In Buddhism, that inner axis is called mindfulness, the strength that rises from within. An older practitioner once told me, "I don't need to be the best. I just want to be steady enough not to be swept away by life." I looked into her eyes and saw it. She had fallen before, been broken before, but through it all, she learned one sacred truth. Nothing is more powerful than inner stability. In all my years of teaching and practice, I've realized something simple, yet deeply profound. Right action doesn't come from the strongest emotion. It comes from the quietest strength. You see, some people act out of anger and regret it. Some act out of fear and retreat after every setback. But those with inner strength, they don't rush. They observe. They focus from within. And when they act, it's not to be praised. It's because it's the right thing to do. The Buddha said in the Dhammapada, "The calm mind is like a still lake, reflecting the moon without distortion." A still mind is a strong mind, not strong from effort, but from depth, like the roots of a tree holding firm beneath the earth. People with inner strength don't need to make noise, but every step they take is grounded. Have you ever felt like you're doing so much, yet nothing seems to move forward? You handle work, family, obligations, but inside, you feel empty? That's what happens when we act from a scattered mind. But when you come back to yourself, when you do even one small thing with full presence, it can nourish you more than 10 rushed efforts. I remember one day at the monastery, a young novice was sweeping the courtyard. After a while, he looked up and said, "Master, I keep sweeping, but the leaves keep falling." I smiled and said, "You're not just sweeping leaves. You're learning how to sweep your mind." He looked confused. So I explained, "The leaves will always fall, but if you sweep with mindfulness, every brush of the broom brings you home to yourself." That's mindfulness, not forcing yourself to focus, but staying close to your own heart. My friend, if you feel scattered, tired, or lost, I'm not here to tell you to do more. I'm here to gently remind you. Sit down, take a deep breath, come home to yourself. Focus is not a skill. It's a place of return. Stability is not something you're born with. It's something you build little by little, every day. And right action doesn't need urgency. It only needs silence deep enough to hear yourself clearly. Remember, you don't need to be better than anyone else. You only need to be focused enough not to betray yourself. Because every time you act from inner strength, you don't just change your circumstances. You shift your karma. And every step you take on the spiritual path becomes more steady because you're walking on ground that you've quietly built within. So if you're still walking through the chaos of life, If you sometimes feel unsteady, and if you're looking for something calm, something clear, something real, maybe you've just found it. Not from me, not from these words, but from that quiet space inside you where you paused just long enough to truly listen. That, my friend, is something precious. And if this message today touched something in your heart, I'd love for you to leave a footprint on this journey with me. Click like, subscribe to Buddhism Seeds. Share this video with someone who might need a breath of stillness. And leave a comment below. I read every word you write. Because each of us is on our own path, home to ourselves. And if we can take these steps together, with compassion, understanding, and mindfulness, then this life, even with its many storms, can become something truly meaningful. I'll see you in the next video. Until then, keep watering the seed of awakening within you. Buddhism Seeds for mindfulness in every moment of everyday life.